Thank you. Thank you so much, Suhail, Professor Suhail, for accepting the invitation and to be here for the talk. So it will be very, I'm sure that it will be very helpful for many PhD students or early career researchers. So you can motivate, so I'm sure that this session will be motivational for many people out there. So we can start, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah,
happy to be here. This is very exciting for sure. Yes.
yeah, right. So before we start, can you introduce yourself? Maybe a little about you.
Yeah. So, hi, my name is Suhail. I'm a assistant instructional professor here at the University of Chicago. I've been a professor here for 3 years. So prior to my professor, again, I'm an instructional professor. We'll discuss that in detail when we talk in the podcast. Before that, I was a PhD student here at the University of Chicago, and prior to that, I had done masters at Carnegie Mellon, worked at Carnegie Mellon, and then before that, I did a master's in Triple IT Hyderabad, and then BTech from Kerala, MES College of Engineering, Kuttipuram. Yeah,
Nice. We both have the engineering background then.
right, correct. Yeah.
Right. So you mentioned about instructional professor, right? What does that mean? What is the difference between a research professor or teaching faculty with instructional professor?
Right. So my context will be here from United States. So in US, especially in computer science departments or STEM fields, typically there'll be two types of professors who are hired. Some universities might have professor, and then another part of the faculty might be lecturers or instructors. So at University of Chicago, we have basically two types of professors. We have regular tenure track professors. These are people who are employed as an assistant professor, and they're expected to do both teach and do research. So that is a regular professor. Tenure track professor is what they are called here at in U.S. universities. Then the second type of professors are known as the teaching track professors. The teaching track professors, depending on institution to institution, their primary responsibility is to teach. So they will be handling some of the main courses in the universities that will be taught to maybe undergraduate, masters, or PhD level students. And they are required to teach a certain number of courses per year. And then there is, depending on which institution you're working for, there may or may not be a strong research expectation in that role. So some universities require that you have to contribute some research at a smaller level, maybe not to the level of a full professor. But some universities may not have that. University of Chicago does not have a research expectation for the teaching track professors. But Carnegie Mellon, for example, I had spoken to them. They have some small research expectation. The big difference, I would say, and especially for your viewers, is that instructional track professors or teaching track professors typically do not advise PhD students. They can
Right.
advise bachelor students, they can advise maybe master's thesis, but they will not typically advise a PhD student. Whereas a regular tenure track professor, they will be expected to recruit PhD students, and they will be advising PhD students as part of their job responsibility.
Right. Okay. So
Mhm.
that is what is mean by instructional professor, right? So because
Right.
I didn't hear about instructional professor here in Australia, I think we don't
Mm.
have the instructional professor, that kind of a particular name
Mhm.
for teaching faculty. So we have lecturers, assistant lecturers,
Right.
senior lecturers, like that
Yeah.
for teaching purpose.
Right. So it really depends on the individual institution and then their sort of institutional department culture and how they've set up the institution. I'm very lucky to be at U Chicago where we are, there are things that where we are not obviously at par with the research faculty, but we are still sort of considered to be professors, even though we may not be leading research efforts in our department. However, a lot of our work is actually around making sure our instruction itself is based on the latest developments and pedagogical developments in computer science. So we can get involved in pedagogical research as well, which is like what are the best ways in which we teach computer science, for example, or your STEM field. And there's a separate whole ecosystem of that type of research that is going on, like how effectively we can teach computer science concepts. Or those are actually, it's a very big part of the computer science research spectrum itself is just education itself is a big part of that. But yeah, I definitely agree. There are other institutions even within US where a professor is deemed to be research oriented, whereas anybody who's only doing teaching would typically be an instructor or a lecturer or sometimes adjunct professor, right? Somebody
Yes.
who's also in the industry but is coming and teaching part time or doing sort of executive programs or teaching in the evenings. They may or may not have a PhD, but they would be an adjunct professor because they would assume that their work experience is sort of a substitute for having done a PhD to be called a professor. So they would typically be called an adjunct professor. Yeah.
Right. How
Okay.
is your total experience as a professor at University of Chicago?
I think one of the things that I enjoyed. So again, I was a PhD student here before I decided to join the department as a instructional professor. One of the amazing things I would say is I think the quality and the caliber of our students that we teach. So it's a very joyous experience teaching students who are extremely self-motivated and driven. University of Chicago, by the way, for those who may not be aware, is a top like R1 research university in the United States. I don't know offhand, like in the US news rankings, QS World rankings, we are typically in the top 10, top 20 for as a general university. We are like one of the top universities in the world. Even within STEM, especially in physics and chemistry fields, quantum computing fields, and so on, we have a leadership position in those fields. We have a lot of history also. Historically, for those who are in physics, for example, Enrico Fermi was a professor here at the University of Chicago. World's first self-sustaining nuclear reaction as part of the Manhattan Project, happened at the University of Chicago. If you've watched Oppenheimer, those scenes are there from University of Chicago where they did the first nuclear reaction at that time before developing the atomic bomb, and so many firsts are there. Our university is also world famous for its economics departments. In fact, we are probably one of the top leaders in the world for economics. And we have some amazing professors, like a lineage of amazing professors, and specifically for Indians, Raghuram Rajan, for example, is a professor here in the economics department. So he had taken leave before he went to become RBI governor in India,
Oh,
and then after his governorship he came back to continue his professorship here. So yeah, our MBA program also is like one of the top global MBA programs, the Booth School of Business. So yeah, that's basically some idea of the University of Chicago. So it's an amazing experience being in one of these top universities and having teaching these self-motivated driven students, because as you can imagine, the getting into this university is also quite hard. It's as an undergraduate it's quite hard, as for masters and PhD also, especially depending on which field you're trying to get into, it's quite difficult to get into. So everybody is quite intellectually, it's very intellectually stimulating teaching the students here. They're always very active in class. They would they will you have to be on the top of your game as well, right? Like, so when you're giving a
right.
lecture, you can be interrupted at any moment with like a very strong question, and you need to be prepared to answer those things. So you have to do your own research yourself about like the topic that you're teaching to make sure that you're at the top of your game. So definitely that's a situation at University of Chicago. Yeah.
Okay, okay. That's really great. And what is your personal experience as a teaching faculty, though?
I mean, personal experience, I would say like the big benefits of being a teaching faculty, I would say, is that as a PhD researcher, the pressures of research, like publish or perish. As a PhD student, it's already quite intimidating because you have to be on track with your research goals, the things that you have discussed with your advisor. I can't imagine how it is in STEM subfields where you're part of a lab and you have to, you have to spend late nights at the lab. You have a schedule with your equipment and all of those things. There's a lot of pressure there.
Right.
In one of the great things of being teaching track faculty is sort of like a lot of those pressures just immediately disappear. It is, in some sense, that idealized vision of what a professor does. You wake up in the morning, you prepare your lecture notes, you prepare your courses. I mean, there's a lot of work there, but it also feels, in some sense, kind of like there's a lot of things that are within your control, and it's I think it's a very fulfilling job, right? Because you get to teach all of these students, and they're all sort of really enjoy. I mean, mashallah, so far they're all very interested in taking your course, and they interact very nicely, and things are going well, so that's good. But apart from that, the other thing is that there's the summer months. UChicago follows the quarter system, so we have 4 quarters, three of which are the active quarters, and then we have the summer quarter. A quarter is about 9 to 10 weeks, about 3 months. So during the summer quarter, which is from June to almost mid September, beginning of June to almost mid or end September, that is our summer quarter. It is a complete disconnect. You are free to
So
do what you want.
oh, okay, which means we have to be there, right? In the university?
No, you don't
No?
have to be at the university.
Oh,
There's no teaching expectation. There's nothing. So if, it's up to you. If you want to take a personal 3 months vacation travel, you can do that. If you want to build your portfolio and do consulting, for example, a lot of
yeah.
people do consulting during that time. That is also a time you could do consulting. You can reach out to other people. In computer science, there's an active consulting field, but other STEM fields as well, right? People who do chemistry, biotechnology, for example, they do pharma consulting, things like that. So that time period is open for you to fully engage in consulting. If you want to do consulting while teaching, then you have to talk to your university and figure out, like, essentially how that works in terms of time, and making sure there's no conflict of interest between the research university's interest versus your consulting and things like that. So there's a legal team here at U Chicago that I'd have to talk to. I have not started consulting, by the way. I've been about 3 years or so, but it is eventually something that I might start, for secondary, sort of like additional income, and also making sure that um, you're present in that space. You're doing not just teaching but other things as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, do you have any advice to give any yearly career researchers or yearly career PhD students?
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, how they can drive their career after their PhD?
Okay. So some of my advice will be more relevant to CS, computer science PhD students, because that is the subfield that I'm most aware of. As you're approaching the end of your PhD, you need to start obviously thinking about, like, not even end, even if you do it middle or early PhD, that's great. You need to kind of think about, like, what after the PhD. Usually, you don't get the time to think about it because you're so busy in your PhD, your research
Yes.
work, and so on. So you have a couple of options, right? And I would like to think about in terms of how successful your PhD is. Now, typically everybody's PhD, your advisor will not let you defend unless your PhD is successful, that they have some confidence that you will be able to defend your PhD. There are very rare instances where somebody goes into a PhD defense and then there's some trouble
Yeah.
and they may not, but it's so rare. Like, it's almost, when you're in that situation, both your advisor and the committee members in your PhD are, in generally, they're agreeing that the work that you've done is worthy of a PhD. I would say that as you're doing your PhD, and depending on the success of your research and your publication record, I'm going to have, it'll be a very frank conversation, because we
Yeah.
need to be able to cater to everybody, right? So there are PhD superstars. They were able to do their research under an amazing advisor who is well connected, for example. They were part of large research teams, or they were part of extremely productive research groups where they were able to do amazing research, and that they were able to publish in some venues. They were able to attend conferences and get pretty high visibility that they are like a very strong PhD candidate. If you're in that boat, and you'd have to make some assessment, by the way, depending on your relationship with your advisor, you can have this chat with your advisor as well. Part of your advisor's responsibility is also, along with you figuring out what your future career path is going to be, if you have this clear understanding with your advisor that yes, things are going well, we have published 10 papers, we have been able to make it to the top conferences. In computer science, by the way, we measure success by conference publications, not necessarily journal publications. In STEM, I know other STEM fields it's more
Yeah.
journal oriented, but you were highly visible in the top conferences, you were able to do some impactful work. Then you can approach, uh, you can sort of strategize on how do I directly try to get hired as a assistant, as an assistant professor, a research track professor. Again, this is assuming that you're enjoying your PhD, you're really highly motivated by the work that is going on in your PhD, you're able to hit those marks that so then you can kind of decide, okay, I would like to, I think I would like to emulate my advisor's life, for example. I see what my advisor is doing, I like it, I would like that to be my career trajectory. Then what you have to do is essentially you have to attack the assistant professor job market in research track, assistant professor job market. And your advisor will typically help you in your particular subfield. In computer science, it means making a strong job presentation, writing a strong research statement. Usually in each of these, you'd have to assemble what is called a packet of your CV, your just like how you wrote an SOP for your PhD. For professorships, you now need to write your research statement. Typically, you'd have to write your teaching statement. Talk about your experiences TAing. It is highly beneficial, by the way, for people who are trying in that line to have taught some courses as part of your PhD. We can talk about that separately also, like how do you teach as part of being your PhD, being in your PhD. So assemble that, apply to almost every university will have, again, computer science is a very vibrant field. So there's usually every university will have, they will have some internal target. I want to hire 2 or 3 assistant professors, 3 or 4. University of Chicago, they decided that they wanted to rapidly expand their CS department. So they had the funding and buy-in from the university. They're like, we are going to be aggressive. We are going to grow the department by 25 professors in 5 years, for example. That's a very aggressive target.
Yeah.
So you can apply to sort of those universities and so on, right? So that's the research track. It requires heavy motivation. um, and otherwise what you can do is you can do what I did, which is you can maybe research was fun, but at the same time, different people have different research experiences as part of their PhD. A lot of
Yes.
students might experience burnout. They might experience, like, the I liked and I enjoyed working on the topic that I did, but maybe, after spending years on that topic, maybe you kind of see that that topic is losing steam. It's hard to convince the community of the, like, your research contributions. Everybody will have a different research trajectory towards the end of their PhD, but it's not the end of the world, right? You can get into teaching track if you wanted to. So you can apply specifically into teaching track professorships. Actually, before I talk about that, I wanted to structure this response a little better. Before you think of teaching track, if you're still interested in research, but you don't think that you've belonged to that top class, or like of the of there's like some, you would have a little bit of imposter syndrome, and maybe I'm not good enough or something like that. Or but maybe you genuinely believe that, okay, I need to improve my research credentials. Then that is where postdoc comes into play, right? Like, so you apply to postdoctoral positions. Here you would be way more specific and say, here are some amazing groups that I know are doing some amazing work. You would know this from going to conferences, reading research papers, doing your literature surveys, working, extending other people's work, and so on. So a lot of these groups will have funding for postdocs. So one of the things you can do is you can further polish your research experience by going and doing a postdoc position, right? So this, some people, they will flourish when they have a change of scenery, the change of environment, right? So sometimes you may not be satisfied with the existing environment of your PhD, but just by just changing your lab, your environment, the city you're in, that sometimes gives you a fresh perspective. It serves like a fresh start, so that also really helps a lot of people in being even more productive in research. So that's where a postdoc really will help, right? With a postdoc, your expectations will be stronger, like, but also having demonstrated that you're able to do research. In a postdoc, you will probably be expected to be like a sub advisor to PhD students. So you will have more ownership of a research project. You would be asked to guide PhD masters, graduate students, summer students, for example, and then be able to achieve some targets and so on. So it's very much the case that a lot of people spend some time in a postdoc and then use that as a springboard to research positions, right? um, if you want to take a break from research and you think that for me personally, I really enjoyed the teaching aspect of my PhD. So I was, every single quarter I was a teaching assistant here at UChicago. I was doing a lot of work, teaching students and so on, and I found myself, I was really enjoying that part of the PhD, you know so that was my entry point into getting into a teaching track, right?
Yeah.
So, and there are many of us that actually do this, and in some sense, it allows you to have, because not everybody is able to fire 100%, on all cylinders and be 100% engaged in research. It requires a lot of mental effort. It requires a lot of motivation, dedication, and so on. And a lot of things have to go correctly, right? There's a big aspect of luck in this as well, as you can imagine. Were you lucky enough? Did you meet the right people? Did you meet the right advisor, and so on? If not all of that is hitting, then you can consider a teaching track as well. It's a wonderful way to sort of, and it's a wonderful lifestyle, I would say. Like, as I mentioned, your summers are open. You can pursue your hobbies and interests. You can travel. You can spend, especially for a lot of us, we have to spend a lot of time abroad, so you
Yeah.
might miss family as well, right? The ability of like summers being open, going, spending and time with family back home, that's also a big aspect. So you have to kind of think of your life holistically, right? Like, what you would like to do in your life as well. So
Yeah,
that's
just I'm
so
curious to ask, are we
yeah.
paid in that period of 3 months?
It really depends on each individual university. For example, at U Chicago, I have an annual salary,
Yeah.
and the technically that salary is a 9 month salary, but it is paid over 12 months.
Okay.
Right? It's a 9 month salary paid over 12 months. Now, what I'm doing this quarter, for example, this summer, I've decided to take on additional work for the summer. So this summer, I've decided, you know what, it would be nice to get some extra money. And this was voluntarily from my side. I said, I don't mind teaching in the summer also. So now I'll get paid extra on over and above my regular annual salary. Right. So this is how University of Chicago does it, but it's not necessary that all universities have this very specific policy. I think it also ties into the fact that because I'm on a work visa here in US, so I'm on an academic H1B visa. So because of that, I think if you're not paid for a certain amount of months,
Hmm.
that may be counted as like a absence from work. It may be
Yeah.
negatively impact your visa status and so on. So for that,
Mm.
I have this 12-month, paid over, sorry, 9 months paid over 12. It's called 9/12 or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
that's I hopefully this gets some useful information for all of your viewers and listeners to your channel. There's a lot of things that you get to see from the other side being a professor. So some of that information is obviously useful, and everybody can talk about their experience, right? So for someone who's becoming a professor, then I keep thinking of these are the things I wish I knew as a PhD student, right? And that's hopefully what I'm able to convey to everybody who's listening. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really great actually. So I don't know
Mhm.
what other things we have to discuss. Do you have something on your mind?
I mean, my assumption is your audience is you're mostly connecting with PhD aspirants, so
Yes,
people who
PhD
want to,
aspirants.
and then people who are also potentially in the PhD, but they would like to see other people's experiences in PhD
Yeah.
life. Yeah. So maybe some advice for PhD aspirants as well. Um, I would like to say, and do you know, like in terms of your audience, like are they mostly people who are currently master students? Are they bachelor students? Like,
So mostly master students.
okay, okay. So for PhD admissions, and I can tell you from computer science, generally the first thing you always want to think of, like, is in your career trajectories, you always try to climb up the ladder in terms of prestige and so on and so forth. So I, for example, came from a non IIT background, but I was able to get into Triple IT Hyderabad for my masters. I think that was the big change in my
Yeah.
sort of like that was the thing that opened a lot of doors for me. So what I would say is, like, if you aren't in a top university for your bachelor's, then master's is a way for you to elevate your profile to try to get into a top university. So since a lot of your listeners are master's students, I want to probably say a couple of things. One thing is you would have better success in PhD admissions if you are in a research oriented master's program, right? One of the few in computer science, one of the few places that lets you that lets you get some research exposure is definitely like my alma mater, my Triple IT Hyderabad. So for those of you, if it's possible, like I would wholeheartedly suggest, it's one of the best places in India to do computer science research. The faculty is top notch. A lot of the faculty, they would have done their PhDs or postdocs in US, for example. They know they know their fields very well, and they are always targeting the top journals and top conferences. So they don't let them, they're not trying to play, a lot of people in India, for example, they play the numbers game,
Yes.
like, which is like, we just need X number of publications and that is enough for me for my promotion or so on. Triple IT Hyderabad, all of the professors there, they really play they're more into the quality of research, and they try to do the max research that has the maximum
Sorry.
impact. No worries. They try to do research with maximum impact, for example, right? And that will elevate your career as well.
Yeah.
So if you're targeting the top research universities for a PhD, you have to be able to demonstrate, at least in computer science, you have to demonstrate the ability to do research. So you need to have worked in a research lab, worked under a competent advisor, possibly have your name on a publication, right? And there is this, I think, this wrong notion that any publication is enough. Uh, Typically, if you're trying to target the top PhD programs, that is not going to be enough. You have to get into, strong venues, right? Um, and hopefully, your advisor knows what are the strong venues, what are the strong journals, what are the strong conferences that we want to be in, and so on, right? Usually, with computer science, it's the ACM, Association for Computing Machinery. ACM is the parent organization for a lot of computer science research, and all of their conferences are of very high quality, right? In engineering, one of the issues, especially in Asia or in India, is that IEEE as an organization is fantastic, but there are some venues or conferences that may be linked to IEEE, but they are not necessarily of the top quality. This is what we see in the engineering side. Um, so you have to be very careful about this, and you need to make sure you're in an environment that is trying to chase excellence, not just necessarily trying to play the publication numbers game and, you know, just trying to publish in random venues and so on. These can be easily picked apart by the PhD admissions committees when they see that, oh, there's a paper but it's in some no name journal, or like it's in a predatory journal. This is one of the other things that you have to watch out for. In computer science, there are places where, there is a listing of predatory journals. This is, pay to publish journals, for example.
Yeah.
So you want to make sure you stay away from all of those things, right? Because they don't align very well. The
Right.
other thing I want to mention also from faculty side, because maybe you don't get to see this side, is how to approach professors, how to contact professors, when should you be emailing professors, and so on.
Yeah, that is what I want to ask you, actually.
Yeah.
What do you
So
expect when a PhD student apply to you? I'm
okay.
sure I know that you are not you are taking any PhD students. I'm just asking to
Yeah.
curious.
So here's what I would say is important from your side. So the number one mistake I would say is, and I see this not just from masters or PhD students from, let's say, not, from tier 2 or tier 3 engineering colleges. I see this from IIT and NIT students as well. It's very surprising. They don't have to do this usually if they are strong or competent. But
Yeah,
what the first thing you want to make sure you don't do is what is called the mass email. You set up, you're setting up a generic email, and somewhere you were able to collect a bunch of email addresses,
yeah,
and then you're sending to 500 professors. You're So don't play this lottery. I think this is a bad idea, because first of all, a lot of these emails are going straight to the spam box for a lot of these professors. Second, if they, for whatever reason, if they see your email, if they read it, for a lot of people this will actually trigger a negative response, because this is a generic email. This is an email that was not customized to this professor's interests. It is more, if it is like a desperate attempt, right? So it is very obvious from your email that this is like, I am trying to just, email everybody, and I want to see who will respond. This is a very bad approach, I think. Like, this is immediately will be like, this is not going to help you in any way. If anything, like, depending on the professor, like, this might just be like a negative thing, and for whatever reason, if your name were to come up for some other reason, hopefully the professor doesn't remember this name, but it might trigger like a negative response, right? So
yeah,
definitely do not do this thing. Sadly, this is one of those things a lot of Indian students do, um, or not just Indian, but like South Asian students do a lot of this, because I see these emails in my inbox as well. Second is, you want to make sure you understand the professor's background. You're well versed with what is the professor's department. Are they a research professor, right? Are they currently advising PhD students? Most professors will have a group website or a professor's website, so you can go to their website and you can see what is their current active area of research, what are the PhD students that they're advising, right? What is some of the work that they've done, what is the current work that they've done, and so forth. Another thing that you can do is that you see the list of their current PhD students. You can click through, or you can search the PhD student information. You can go to LinkedIn or their personal web pages. You want to see if that PhD student's background is kind of matching with your own. Like, what was that PhD student's background? Where did they do their masters? Where did they do their PhD? So then you can do a calibration. You can kind of see that, is this a professor that you can approach, right? The other thing is, you need to now also respect that professors, usually professors' websites, they will have some information about how they would like to be contacted,
yeah,
and how you would approach, and, like, their information about, because a lot of, especially the top professors, they would get lots of emails, right? So they would like to, ideally they want to make sure they filter out all the automatic lottery emails, and they want to get rid of all of those emails, right? They would like to connect with genuine, like students who genuinely want to, who are in that research area and so on. So I would say the first thing you can do is, if you have formally applied to the university, then you are in a great shape to individually email the professor as well. So this is like a little knock on the professor's door saying that I have applied to the PhD program. I am specifically interested in your work, and I am very interested in, like, certain things. So you want your email to be very clear that you are specifically targeting this professor's line of research. You're really interested in some of the work that they've done, that you're especially, uh, bonus points if you have actually read the work, and you're able to even propose an extension. Like, if you're able to do that, you are now immediately in the mind of that professor. So as the department is now going through the PhD packets, admission packets, your professor would say, "Hey, this is a student I think has potential." They can mark you as being, this application has to go to the next stage of review, right? So this is what you should be doing if you want to specifically target professors that way, right? You can also feel free to, in a few sentences, kind of mention what are the things that you've done that you think makes you a good fit to that group. Like, I did my undergrad research under so and so. Hopefully, if your advisor, undergrad or masters, is a well-known professor,
Yeah.
we were able to publish at so and so venue, and I think our work is aligning very closely with your work. If you're able to do some of this on behalf of the professor, then that is one of the best communication that you can have with a professor about PhD admissions. I think that would be those are the strong candidates that we see. So even if you believe your background might be sort of deficient,
Hmm.
like, for example, I didn't do my BTech at IIT, for
Yeah.
example, and you're trying to target like an MIT level admission, right? But you can say that you're doing a master's, at IIT or whatever, and this is the kind of fundamental research we are working on, and I think it aligns very well with your research interests, right? That's how you can try to close some of those gaps if you needed to, right? Hopefully that makes some sense. This is how you should
Yeah,
be
yes,
approaching.
yes, yes, really. So in my case
Yeah,
also, as you said, I was doing the lottery thing. I was mailing to
yeah,
many professors at that time
yeah,
because I was not getting enough support from others.
yeah.
So some advice or anything at that time. So
To
now
be
I
honest, yeah, yeah, yeah. Go ahead. No, please
no,
continue.
it's
Yeah.
okay. So yeah, now they have a lot of tools and there are many
Mm,
motivational people we can
yeah.
inspire of. But at that time, I was not able to see a single person
Mm.
doing some, yeah, giving some advice regarding this. So I was too confused.
That's the thing, right? So if you're in a good institution, for example, if you're in IIT, IIT or NIT, as I saw in one of your reels, one thing is you have a peer support group of other people who are doing bachelor's masters. They have already kind of set their targets. They're able to tell you, these are the universities you should target. These are the things, the internships that you can do right now. These are the research projects you can get involved in. You don't get that benefit when you're in maybe not such a great institution,
Yes.
right? So, but luckily, like you said, because of YouTube and Instagram, and that was my intention also. For like, I have now started an Instagram page, and I'm trying to reach people, and I'm trying to give advice for people in the same path, especially for those who, for whatever reason, not everybody is going to be able to do BTech in IIT. It's very
Yes.
limited, right? There are millions of people who want to do great things, but there's a few thousand seats, right? And it's very sad that that's the situation we have in India. But it's not like it's not a foregone conclusion. Even no matter where your journey takes you, you can do things from your on your end to improve your profile and situation and so on. Speaking of which, I also wanted to mention that as like one of the key things I think is like a pathway that's not very well explored. there are people who are like, so for me, my passion and interest in computer science was from school level. I was really into computer science. Like I was really into programming. I was lucky to be in a school where we had a good programming and coding class. This was back in 1999, 2000, 2001. I was learning C and C++ in CBSE. Um, and I knew I did not. I was so fortunate to not have any confusion like after 12th what, this is a big confusion for a lot of people.
Yeah.
I was like, no, I need to do engineering because I love computers, right? And what branch? Oh, I have to do computer science. And when I joined, this was 2003. This is the after the first dot-com bubble burst. There was a big run behind ECE at that time. Everybody was getting into ECE. People were avoiding CSE. They were so
Yes,
scared
yes,
computer
yes.
science. So I came in with a reasonable entrance rank for the college for Kuttipuram. And then they told me, ECE seats are available. Why are you not taking that? And I was like, no, I want to be computer science. Like, this is me. I know what I need to do.
Yeah.
And then, so you can be motivated and passionate at that point, right? But at the towards the end of my engineering, I was hungry for more. I was like, I have to do postgraduate, right? I know that I can learn more. I there was a fundamental limitation of back then it was Calicut University. You said you were at which university was it in Kochi that you graduated from?
MG University, Chemical Engineering
MG,
College.
MG. So MG, Calicut, they're all the same. Now it's all KTU, I think.
Yes.
All the technical universities under KTU. I looked through the syllabus recently, not much has changed. And I was like, I know this is computer science can be much more than this. So
Right.
I had that hunger for like I need to do postgraduate. So I started some basic gate preparation and all of those things. I wrote gate, it was okay. I would have maybe gotten into an NIT for masters, but I separately wrote IIIT Hyderabad's PGEE, postgraduate and resident. That was the milestone. That was the thing. I think the one decision that I made that changed
Your
my
life
career path
changed.
completely because I went to IIIT Hyderabad. I was sitting with a standing offer from Wipro back then. I had gotten placed into Wipro, and the funny thing, this I was placed into Wipro in 2007. The starting salary of Wipro for placement then and now has changed by maybe 25,000 or 30,000 rupees. It's
Oh, is it?
whatever the offer was back then. Like if I had gone to Wipro, and many of my classmates, they did fantastically well, right? Like they went to Wipro, they were able to. I know there are people who are passionate in computer science. They decided to go through the job route. They've done very well. They were able to climb the corporate ladder. They
Yeah.
got into managerial roles. They're now team leads and so on. They were able to jump between tech companies, and everybody, mashallah, is doing in a very great situation. But I was really interested in research, right? So I was very glad that I went to this. I was
Right.
able, I was matched up with amazing advisors at IIIT Hyderabad. My I had two advisors. They have both since become the deans at IIIT Hyderabad. My first advisor was a Malayali, actually. He was a IIT Kharagpur product from '84. He did his masters at University of Maryland, right? So he was the director of ACM India, and he became the institute director, PJ Narayanan. I owe a lot to him because he was able to give me the very clear cut advice on what are the things we are targeting, what are the publications we need to do, and so on. Well, second advisor was Kishore Kotapalli, sir. He became dean academics. He recently became professor at IIIT Hyderabad. He finished his PhD at John Hopkins, right? So I got paired up with amazing people right out of,
Yes.
and I was very lucky because back then IIIT Hyderabad was only starting to become well known as a place for research, but they had amazing faculty. Such luck, because now I know it's very hard to get into IIIT Hyderabad
Mm.
because it's now very well known how good their caliber is. But the main thing I wanted to say for anybody who's doing BTech, who's watching this, let's say they didn't do very well in JEE, they couldn't get into the college, but they're really interested in research. They're actively watching YouTube videos of, lectures from MIT and from Harvard and so on, and they're really interested in the topic. One of the things that you can do is, you know, Um, in if you finished your second year BTech, you can think of lateral entry into Triple IT Hyderabad. So they take people who have done 2 years of BTech, and then you have to do 4 years at Triple IT Hyderabad, but you graduate with masters. You graduate with the masters by research. So you're not wasting time. They will count some of your course credit and so on. And just now on Instagram, I had a question from somebody who just finished 12th. They were like, "I love research. I love computer science. What do I do? I didn't do so well in JE and KEAM, so I couldn't get into a top college. Should I drop and do a repeat?" And I told them, I don't know what your rank is. Get into the best college that you can and prepare for this lateral entry exam, right? Because now what you're doing is you're shifting the subjects. Maybe you're interested in computer science and you don't care about physics and chemistry. Why you want to take a drop here and relearn these things that are not useful for you?
Yes.
Start your engineering journey. Focus on mathematics and computer science, the topics that they will be testing you in this lateral entry exam, and then use it to try to get into Triple IT Hyderabad, or focus on GATE and get into a master's program. That way, you can really enhance your visibility, your potential.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah. So I want to ask you one thing, that is it easy to get USC University or University of Chicago after bachelor's degree for a PhD?
I will be very frank. Every single person that I met a lot of my STEM PhD students.
Yeah.
Sorry, when I was a PhD student, or everybody else who was in my like cohort, other PhD students, we were looking at IIT and IIT ISER.
Okay.
It's it is I would say almost impossible to get in right after BTech.
Right.
Um, I You have to enhance your profile by having done a master's at a better institution. Show that you have research work or research potential. My roommates, so I we lived in one house. I had three roommates. They were all physics PhD students. IIT Bombay, IIT Bombay, University of Texas at Austin. And these were my roommates.
Yeah.
I was an older person because I had done all these masters and all before coming for PhD. So so yeah, I would say it's almost impossible. I think every person that I talk to is either IIT, NIT, or ISER, at least in the top
Yes, sir.
US universities. Yeah. So if you couldn't get there in your BTech, no problem. Have focus and try to get in for masters at these places, or do a masters abroad also. But if research is your intention, make sure you're targeting research oriented masters,
Yes.
where you are working with somebody who is willing to put you on, who is willing to give you work where you're doing active research, you're making research contributions, and your name appears on research publications.
It's obligations.
That's important, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So at last, any other advice or suggestions to give the audience?
I think the other thing is, like, you want to make sure that you want to do this,
Yeah.
and um the while you're reading and working on research and reading papers and watching research and scientific related videos, it should not feel like work. You should genuinely be passionate and interested about these things. When on my Instagram, I posted a reel about my journey. My journey took 14 years, starting from BTech, right? Starting from BTech through two master's programs and PhD, I finally became an assistant professor, instructional professor in a top research university after 14 years of study. So, to somebody who sees that, you will have two reactions. One reaction is like, "Oh my God, you studied for 14 years. Are you crazy?" Versus, "Wow, you studied for 14 years. That's amazing." Right? Those are the two reactions you'd have. For the person who says, "You studied for 14 years, are you crazy?" That means you you see studying or researching as a chore, as something that is work. If you see these things as work, then you may have to reconsider. there may be other things that you will be passionate about that you can really put your mind and heart and soul into, that you will really achieve, like you will have amazing success in those fields, like because you don't see it as work, right?
Right.
But when you're working on publications and you're working on paper deadlines or experiments, yes, there are things that will definitely feel like work for sure. But that drive has to be there, that fire has to be there, otherwise it's very hard to break into these fields, I think. Yeah. Yeah, I think that
True,
would be the
true.
main thing that we have to talk about. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I think we can wind up the session.
Yeah, absolutely. It was such a pleasure talking to you,
Yeah,
and I really hope, like, they would whenever I think about my own journey, I would think about these are things I wish I had told I knew before,
before.
and inshallah through your channel you get to, like, I get to talk about some of these inner thoughts that I had, and I
Yes.
really hope that this is beneficial to people
Yes,
who are
I'm
listening.
sure this is
Yeah,
beneficial for me as well because I'm also
fantastic.
finishing my PhD, right, this year.
Fantastic,
It
fantastic.
will
I'm so
help me
happy.
a lot.
So happy to have this conversation. 100%. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your experience with us. Thank you.
Welcome. You're absolutely welcome. Yeah.
Okay.